Hey everyone out in the VC, it's Matt. Hope you're getting ready for Halloween tomorrow and have a lot of fun stuff planned. It's been a while since I made a video. I'm not sure even how long ago that was. So I wanted to just sort of in the mood to do one today. What I'm doing here is kind of jumping on the bandwagon and stealing a concept, an idea that some other people are already doing. Joe, me and Mr. Mayo, and Larry Graves and a couple others, I think, where they're rating taking an album and rating the songs in order of preference for them. And they're doing it for the Beatles albums, but they've also done it for some other records too. So I wanted to jump on there and do the Beatles albums. I hope to do some other albums in the future too, non-Beatle albums. And I hope it's okay to do that. I hope I'm not stepping on anybody's toes or anything by jumping on the bandwagon, like I said. But the reason I thought it would be a good idea to do it for the Beatles is that I have done reviews of all the Kinks albums, which I've wrapped up. It's been quite a while, about a year or so ago. I'm in the process of going through and reviewing each of the Beach Boys albums in the order of release. And I also did that with the Jam, even though it's been close to a year since I've done one. I need to get back on that and finish it off because I reviewed their first two albums and I need to review the rest of them, which isn't that hard because they only have about 6 or 7 albums. But um, so when it comes to the Beatles, the reason I think this might be a better way to do it is with the Kinks. I figured that everybody in America knew the handful of hits that they had, even though there are some huge Kinks fans over here and in England. But in addition to that, there's just these wonderful, great albums and a lot of great songs that weren't hits that the Kinks made. They've said it a million times. They're the second best band ever behind the Beatles, in my opinion. And so I was hoping through those reviews to sort of tell people, hey, there's a whole lot more to the Kinks than Lola, You Really Got Me, and check this stuff out because it's the best of the best of the best. And, if you love music, you're missing out if you're not checking out these albums and songs. Same thing with the Jam, who were huge in England but had little or no popularity in America, a little bit, but not very much. And another great band that, I was hoping to, through reviewing their albums in sequence, to kind of show people, hey, here's something worth checking out. The Beach Boys was that, but it was also for myself as well because I was like a lot of people. Everyone knows the Beach Boys hits. I just wanted to sort of go through the albums and find out if there's anything else there besides the hits, which turns out so far I'm up to Smiley Smile is coming up next. So far, there's been a lot of great stuff on the albums songs I'd never heard because they weren't the radio hits. We'll see how it goes. I mean, they released albums all the way through 2012, so I don't know how long the good stuff's going to hold out or if it will, but we'll find out. And it's been fun for me to do that. I was one of those people, like a lot of people, that think with the Beach Boys, as long as you've got one of the greatest hits albums that covers the 60s and then you've got a copy of Pet Sounds, you're probably good to go. But turns out there's quite a bit more interesting and good fun stuff and great music with the Beach Boys than just Help Me Rhonda or California Girls. But when it comes to the Beatles, I had thought before about I should do some Beatle album reviews. I have done some of the solo albums, reviewed those, and I probably will do more of those. But I just thought, they're my favorite band, and I'm not in any way saying that people, because I've seen people do reviews of Beatles albums. I watch them and I enjoy watching them, and they're great. And everybody's got their opinion, and sometimes somebody brings up a point that I never thought of, or just sort of an interesting little nugget of information that I hadn't heard. So, by all means, anyone out there who's wanting to review Beatles albums, go ahead and do that, and certainly encourage you to do that. I'm not downplaying it. Just for myself personally, they're my favorite group, but everyone knows the Beatles, especially people here that are here specifically because they love music on the VC. Most people in the VC, as far as I can tell, are Beatle fans and pretty huge Beatle fans of that, have the albums, know the history and so forth. And so that was sort of my stumbling block when I thought it'd be fun to review it, or when I thought, I guess should I review some Beatle albums was just what am I going to say that people don't already know? You know, I'm just come on here and say, well, you know, this band was from England and that was pretty unusual in 1964 because rock and roll had historically come from America and they had long hair and were known for that. Or in 1967 they released this thing called Sergeant Pepper and boy howdy, that was a game changer and a cracker. I mean, there's really, you all know all that. So to review the albums, again, if other people do it, that's great and that's fun. But for me, I just can't really think of much to add. When I would do the Kinks albums and the Beach Boys albums and so forth, I would review the songs, but I'd do a little history and the context of the times they come out and so forth. And I know there's a lot of people on here that are Beach Boys and Kinks fans and so forth, but there's a lot of people that aren't. And so my hope there was that I was, you know, sharing something that some people didn't know and maybe would discover some good new music. I don't think there's really anything about the Beatles I can tell you that you don't already know, which is why I really like this idea that Larry and Joe have been doing to rate their songs. They call it worst to best or least to best or whatever, but then they also qualify that saying that, especially on Beatles albums, a lot of times you love every song on the album, so it's not really a worst, but it's just, you know, you like things in different degrees, so something's got to be in the last spot, something's got to be your favorite. So it's not a question. Now, when I do some other albums and I want to do some non-Beatle albums, like I said, I've got a few in mind. Let that be a surprise when I get to them. And there are some albums where there's some songs on there that I just don't care for per se, and some songs I really like. I'm talking non-Beatles albums. When it comes to the Beatles, there's like maybe 3 or 4 songs that I just flat out don't like, and then there's a handful of songs that I'm like, they're just okay. I don't like them or not like them, but most of them I really like. That's kind of the wonder and the magic of the Beatles, that there's not another band that ever did that I can think of. So I'm just going to say rank the songs in my order of preference, I guess, because like I said, I do like all of them. So we'll start at the beginning. There's a glare on that, I don't know, and well, it's not like it really matters. You've all seen this album. Please Please Me, their first album, came out in 1963. In America, we, of course, until the 80s when the CDs came out and there were the British versions, and then later the vinyl box sets, and they went with the British versions in America. But up until that point, we knew this as either introducing the Beatles or the early Beatles, the 65 Capitol record, which both of those had a little bit different track listing, but basically the same idea. So this came out in England, and this was about a year before they broke in America. Spent like 6 months at #1, only to be replaced and dropped down to #2 when the new #1 showed up, which was the second Beatles album over there in England. Yeah, I love this album. This is great. And as far as first albums go, this is one of the best. I mean, this is it's better than the first Beach Boys or the first Kinks album, even though those are great albums too. It's better than the first Rolling Stones album, even though that's a really good one. This is a really solid one. And some days, and I love this album all the time, but some days I'm just really in the mood to listen to it, and this is one of my favorite Beatles albums. And other days it's somewhere in the middle of the pack or so. But what I love about this album, and there are, how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cover songs out of the 14 songs on the album. So the rest of them are originals by Lennon and McCartney, which is pretty rare for a band back then to have that many originals or any originals on their debut album. Covers they do well. I'm not a huge fan of cover songs, generally speaking, but the Beatles always knew how to do it well and make it their own and make it where it wasn't just most cover songs are either really bad or they're just basically a carbon copy of the original, and that's why I was never a huge fan of them, because it's just like, well, just go listen to the original person if I want to hear that. But the Beatles had a way of taking a cover song, and the original cover song is still great, you still love it, but then they put their own stamp on it and sort of make it their own and do just as good and a lot of times a better better job of covering the song. But I like everything on here. So let's get to the listing, I guess. Oh, and the other thing I liked about this album, real quick, while I'm thinking about it, is the Beatles arrived almost fully formed with this. I mean, they had had a couple of, 2 or 3 45s before this came out. They had Please Please Me and Love Me Do. And I don't know if From Me to You had come out. I think that's after this. I'd have to double check. But they still sound sort of 50-ish or early 60s music, or pre-Beatles early 60s music on this album. They sound like the Beatles to an extent, but they still sound sort of like I said, sort of like early 60s music, sort of pre-Beatles music. And they really become the Beatles fully formed, I think. I guess you could argue the song Please Please Me, but probably with She Loves You. And then the album that comes out after this with the Beatles is the Beatles are fully, completely, the Beatles sound is there, fully formed. And this is wonderful and great, but is still a work in progress to some extent, which makes this album kind of stand out from the rest of their discography in a way, in a good way. I mean, it's a great album. I love it. And there is a natural progression from this to with the Beatles to Hard Day's Night to on down the road. But this one sort of sits out by itself in a way. So does the White Album, in my opinion, but that's in a different, totally different way. But yeah, I mean, they are pretty much the Beatles, but they're not quite there yet, which doesn't mean this isn't as good as the other Beatles, the later Beatles stuff. It's just that they're still coming to their own, I guess. And so it's kind of interesting to hear them. They would never sound quite like this again. And not that it's a good or a bad thing. It's just just sort of out there by itself in some ways. So the rundown, and I'll go from, there's 14 songs on here, 14 tracks. Number 14, I'm going to go with Boys by Ringo. He sings it with gusto. It's one of his best vocals, and he gets into it. He's having fun. It's a great song. I love it, but I mean, like I said, something has to be number 14. Number 13, it's probably going to, might surprise some people, but I Saw Her Standing There, which I like it, and it's just a little, it's your typical Beatles song of the time, of that era, and it's a little generic, I guess. But it's a great song. It just never, I don't know, it's good. But 13, I Saw Her Standing There. It just never did it for me the way the rest of the songs did on this album, or the Beatles songs of this, 1962 to 63 era. A lot of people probably rate that a lot higher, but number 12 is A Taste of Honey. Love the vocal on that. That's Paul singing, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Great song, just stuff on here that I like better. So, I mean, I can't say anything bad about any of these songs, so it'd be more fun probably with some albums where I can say, well, this song's the last place because it stinks, but there's no stinks on here at all. Everything's great. Even I Saw Her Standing There, and that'd be the closest thing to a weak track, really. And that's not really that weak. But so number 12 was A Taste of Honey. Number 11 is Misery, another great song. Number 10, P.S. I Love You, which is I like that. It's kind of an old, not a rock and roll song so much as it's an old standard, an old crooner song, sort of a Bing Crosby type thing from the 40s or something. It could have been a song from the 40s, actually, when you think about it. Paul does a great vocal on it, and it's drives along nicely, a very smooth song, and enjoyable little ditty. Number 9 is Love Me Do, their first 45. Of course, P.S. I Love You was on the flip side of that. Great song, just very simple, almost sort of rockabilly, basic, little rock and roll, shuffle beat type song, almost a skiffle rockabilly song. It's a good start for them. The funny thing is their next single, Please Please Me, is a whole lot better, even though Love Me Do is a great song, I think, but Love Me Do comes in at number 9. That always reminds me when I was, I'd known about the song Love Me Do since probably when 9 or so, but one morning, I think it was in 6th or 7th grade, I got to school early for some reason, and there was nobody there. Janitor was there, and the school was open, so I went in and got a basketball, went out and just out on the playground and shot baskets for 20, 30 minutes, and then other kids started showing up. For some reason, the song Love Me Do popped into my head while I was walking around, bouncing, dribbling the ball, and shooting baskets. And every time I've heard that song since then, it reminds me of that. Would have been like 76, 77, somewhere back there. Always reminds me of shooting baskets. Number 8, this will surprise people too, because a lot of people probably have this at number 1, is Twist and Shout. It's a great rocker. John just shreds it, and the harmony is great. I love the song. Maybe part of that is because you hear it all the time, so there might be a little fatigue factor there. I can't say anything bad about it, but again, there's songs on here I like more. Number 7, I'm going with Chains. Just a good sing-along. That's another thing about this album. This is really a showcase for their voices. I mean, of course, the next album up and Hard Day's Day, all Beatles albums are, but really, this is one of their great vocal showcase records. The music is great and wonderful too, but the focus seems to be on their harmonies and their voices on this album, especially to my ears anyway, and I've always thought of it as just a great vocal album, and they all are in top form. Even Ringo's great with Boys and all. But so yeah, Chains number 7. Number 6, Do You Want to Know a Secret? One of George's lead vocals on here. A very naive, tentative, innocent song. I think it was John based it on one of the Disney songs. Was it When You Wish Upon a Star? I think I might have that wrong, but just a very almost primitive sounding song in some respects, and I love George's voice. Sounds very nasally, almost like he's got a cold a little bit, but just a great song. Number 5, Please Please Me, their second single and the first number 1. Just a driving, wonderful, great, propulsive rock and roll song, and that's what really, they Love Me Do made them big in England, but really more so in Liverpool. Please Please Me sort of broke them nationwide over there, and the legend begins. Just a great song. The funny thing about it, odd as it sounds on an album titled Please Please Me, is that Please Please Me sort of kind of never seemed to fit on this album to me with the mix of the rest of the songs. It seems a little out of place, and not sure why, but anyway, it's a great song, and if I was rating these songs on a 1 to 10 scale, I think every one of these would get a 10. I might give a 9 to I Saw Her Standing There and maybe Boys, but everything else would be a 10, a 9 at the most, so certainly Please Please Me would be a 10. Number 4, There's a Place. Just great harmonies, singing, and the music is wonderful and brilliant and stomping, and that could have been a 45, I think. I love that song. Number 3 is Ask Me Why. Great John vocal. I think it's a little more complex of a song than most of the other stuff on here musically. The vocal again, like I said, and just a damn good song. So we're up to the top 2. If you're keeping track, you know what 2 are left. Number 2, Anna, which is the who is that? Arthur Alexander. I've heard the original. That's a great song too. John takes it and makes it his own. It makes it his own. One of his best vocals, in my opinion. One of my favorite vocals by him, and there's a lot of them, but that's up there. And that leaves number 1, Baby It's You, which is again another John Lennon vocal. So we've got what the top three are John songs. It's a great album, and I wish I could find something critical to say about it, but cover's great, songs are great, and you know, it's I pull it out every once in a while. It's probably not, don't play this as much as I do the other Beatles albums, but sometimes this is what I'm in the mood for and nothing else will do. And it's, wish someone still made music like this today. Anyway, have a happy Halloween, everybody. Have a good, what's left of the weekend here. And I'll be back with some Beach Boys reviews. Hope maybe next week. Some of the albums that I needed that I didn't have, I ordered and have since got those. So those will be coming up. See ya.